Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm Maria Georgopoulou. I'm the director of the Gennadius Library. Tonight I'm really thrilled because it is the opening event in 2026 in Athens during a year that is extremely important for the Gennadius Library, which is 100 years old this year. This obviously is a milestone and a landmark for this library that is so interesting and so important for the history of the world of the Eastern Mediterranean, of Greece and Hellenism. And it is a great pleasure to open these events of 2026 with a small symposium that is happening in a big room, our auditorium here at the American School, but which celebrates a wonderful acquisition. Without further ado, and with the promise that there are plenty of wonderful events planned, including a conference, other symposia, and an exhibition, in addition to our current exhibition in the Makrianis wing, we really hope that we will see more of you either here in Kotzen Hall or online, and that you will all be ready to appreciate what the library has done for the last 100 years and what is poised to do in the future. I think for those of us in this room, especially as we are in the American School of Classical Studies, a research institution focusing on archaeology and history, I think you would all agree with me that the most famous inhabitant resident of the island of Milos is this statue. A statue that since 1821 resides at the Louvre. And of course, this is Venus de Milo, or the Aphrodite of the island of Milos. And since the statue's discovery, it has become one of the most famous works of ancient Greek sculpture in the world. And since this statue, as far as I understand, will not be a central thread in what the rest of the speakers cover, I thought I would permit myself, and hopefully I will not bore you, a little excursus on the discovery of this statue for the introduction to this symposium on the family, on the archive of the Brest family. The discovery of the Venus de Milo was not a simple matter, and it is one that seems to be based primarily on French accounts and documents. The statue, not known before its accidental discovery on April 8, 1820, by a farmer by the name of Giorgos, in the area of the theater of Milos, was soon sought after by more than one suitor who wanted to say and pretend that they were important in its discovery. Olivier Voutier, a French sailor interested in archaeology, witnessed the discovery and encouraged the farmer to continue digging. Dumont d'Urville, a French naval officer who arrived in Milos shortly after the discovery, wrote an account of the find. It may be that this is the account that reached the ambassador of France in Constantinople, Rivière, and his assistant, the Count de Marcellus, who are the ones that have managed to really put their presence and their names next to the discovery of this statue. But of course, there was also the vice-consul, the French vice-consul of Milos, Louis Brest, who thought also that he deserved some credit. And we will get back to him after this. Of these suitors, of course, it was Voutier, in conjunction with the Comte de Marcellus, who managed to take center stage, as I said. The farmer and Voutier uncovered, in addition to the statue, two large pieces, the statue in two large pieces, and a third smaller piece, and the fragment of an arm, a hand holding an apple, and two herms were also found alongside the statue. And apparently there were also two inscriptions, one of which was red and the other one partly red, but unfortunately they are now lost. After stopping in Milos, d'Urville's ship sailed to Constantinople, where he reported the find to Comte de Marcellus, who was the assistant, as I said, to the French ambassador, Marquis de Rivière, and they agreed that Marcellus had to go to Milos to buy the statue. By the time Marcellus arrived in Milos, the statue apparently had been sold to someone else, and it already had been loaded on the ship. And we understand that here in the port of Milos, there was a fight, fist fight or whatever. The French intervened, and eventually Marcellus was able to buy or acquire or get the Venus. And the Venus got on the ship. It actually went around the Eastern Mediterranean and eventually arrived in Paris. It was brought to France, to the king, and it was installed in the Louvre. And what is interesting, apparently, is that it was decided that the statue would not be restored, but would be left almost in its original state. Made of Parian marble, the statue is larger than life-size, standing over 2 meters high, and is missing both arms. Now, the fact that the arms are not there was, of course, has created a lot of issues, because how were her arms poised, positioned? What was she doing with the arms? Was she holding an apple? Was she alone as a statue, or was she part of a group? All of these were discussions among the first archaeologists or historians who were looked at the statue, and it seems that the one that has prevailed is that she was holding an apple. And on the basis of an inscription that was found near the sculpture, it was attributed to Alexandros from Antioch on the Meander, though the name was also disputed. So there are many things that are disputed about this statue. What seems to be important is that when the statue arrived in Paris, it didn't have a lot of fame that came with it. And the director of the Louvre, had to find a way to make her appealing, or to figure out how to do that. So he turned to a person who is very well known to us, especially here in Athens, Monsieur Fauvel, who was a consul of the French here in Athens. And Fauvel was very keen on finding antiquities, on trading in antiquities, and he is the one who actually was called to comment on the statue. And he found the statue to be excellent. He decided and proclaimed that it was of classical age, and that of the classical period. And both he and other scholars at the time in Paris decided that this was a statue that would have been made either should be placed somewhere between the time of Phidias and Praxiteles. Eventually, of course, it was, and after a lot of ink was spilled, it was sort of clear that this is a statue of the Hellenistic age, and this was suggested by Furtwängler in the end of the 19th century. So the Venus de Milo rapidly became a cornerstone of the Louvre's antiquities, and it was seen by all, and it really became a masterpiece. Now let us come to the Gennadius. In the original collection of Ioannis Gennadius, there are more than 50 titles of monographs on the Venus de Milo. Clearly, this was a topic of great interest to a man who was keen to research the beginnings of archaeology, the appreciation of Greece as a land and a culture by the Europeans, but also he was an ambassador of Greece in London who was eager to write against the expoliation of the Parthenon by Lord Aegean, and Gennadius had an archive on Fauvel himself. So this is the home where the Brest archive has come to. Next to the studies published in the 19th century that I just referred to, and these 50 studies were things that Gennadius had acquired until 1922, the Gennadius is also a library that breathes the air of the Aegean Sea and contains unique historical material for the Byzantine, Ottoman, and early modern period, connecting French and Greeks, Latin and Orthodox, as they coexisted for centuries. This is a symbol, this statue is a symbol, and is a symbol for in France and at the Louvre. And if you will allow me a joyful or slide or playful slide, along with all the discussion about what Venus would be holding during the Olympics of 2024, this iconic statue was actually given other attributes, and here she is in different colors in front of the National Assembly and holding all the attributes for the sports. But I think it's time to come back to Louis Brest, who was, as we said, French vice-consul on the island of Milos at the time when the statue was discovered in 1820. According to the accounts of the time, the statue was discovered in a niche. And I think what is important for this slide is actually to read what is in parentheses in the label, that Louis Brest had a conversation with the architect Charles Dussault about the discovery of this statue. So as early as the 1840s, that is about 20 years after the statue had arrived in Paris, Louis Brest sought recognition and sought to actually create and to recognition as for the role he had as a discoverer of the statue, and also claiming that he protected this statue for the French ambassador, and that he secured its acquisition for France. The official narrative, apparently, for the statue when it arrived in France excluded him. It was Count Marcellus and the Marquis de Rivière who had taken center stage, and Brest was isolated on the island of Milo, and eventually he died in 1862. His eldest son, Felix, inherited the post, and he continued to work on behalf of establishing the claims of his father. But the only thing he managed to do was one concession that the curator of the Louvre proposed to the director that Brest's good offices be acknowledged on the label at the statue's feet. And I wanted to get to comment a bit on this article on an article by Edem Eldem, who is a professor at the Collège de France. And some of you in this room may know that he wants to uncover many documents that are related to the removal, authorization, and legalization of antiquities from Ottoman lands, so he had organized back in 2019 a conference on this very topic, looking for the contribution of the locals on this on the sort of trade of antiquities. So it seems that Louis Brest in 1843 shared with the authorities, or some authorities, a very important and very unique document, which was a decree by the Capudan Pasha, a decree, though, that unusually is bilingual. It has the text in Greek in the bottom and in English, and no, it doesn't have it in English, in Turkish, in Ottoman Turkish. And the lower part, the Greek part, would be, I guess, for a Greek-speaking audience or reader, and the upper part is approximately the exact same text, and it's like a summary of the text. So what is interesting about this decree is, first of all, that what we see, and we may or may not be able to read in the middle of the document, is all the title of the Capudan Pasha, the captain of the admiral of the Turkish fleet, and all of his title is in Greek. And this Bouillardi, this decree, speaks about an instance and some crisis on the island of Milos. This is in the Turkish text. We hear of a stone idol that was sold by a priest, and indeed the peasant who found it sold it to a priest named Vergis, on behalf of Dragoman Nikolaki Mourouzi, who was in Constantinople. But then all of this issue happened, that the statue had been sold, and the French came back, and eventually the Vergis, this priest, ceded the statue to Marcellus. So what is interesting about this document, and all of this is not my own research, is Edem Eldem's research, is that the statue is only mentioned incidentally, and it's a stone idol, and it's just a pretext, and the text itself does not really say authorizes the French to have it or not, but it seems that it was written after the French had the statue anyway. So this is all I will say about the Venus de Milo, and I hope, though, that this sort of really led us into some connection with the Brest family, the family of these vice-consuls on the island of Milos, who happened to be there during the moment of the discovery of the island. So fast forward to 2023. At some point, I received a call from Mark Mazauer, the historian from the University of Columbia, who is an overseer of the Gennadius library, and he said, Maria, I know how important archives are and the riches that the Gennadius library has. Are you interested in an archive? And of course, you know, all of us, our eyes sort of I mean, we're very interested, obviously. So Mark brought me into contact with Suzanne Vera, who is here with us today. It's her first time in Greece, and she visited Milos yesterday. So we're very excited to have you here. We spoke, I mean, we communicated, we had a long correspondence, and in May 2024, as I went to the annual gala of the American School in New York, I visited Suzanne and her mother, Marilyn Brunel, in Long Island, and I came back to my hotel with some documents. Suzanne had been very good at going into the basement where her mother kept these documents. She had put them neatly in Ziploc bags. I have to say that when I saw it, I mean, I thought, oh my goodness, I mean, this is going to be sort of damp and all of that. But actually the material is in rather good shape. Suzanne, as she may want to tell us at the end of the evening, maybe, I mean, had started looking for her ancestry and where she came from. She stumbled upon these things in the basement of her mom's eventually. And then she realized that probably she wanted to share them with an institution that would know what to do with them. So it seems that the person who was responsible for bringing this material from Milos to Europe, to New York, to Mexico City, to Peru, back to New York, was her great-grandmother, right? Cécile, née Brest, and Cécile married Frederick Earl, and they had a few kids, as you saw. All this material from Milos sort of traveled the world. So I opened the material very carefully in the hotel room. Irene Solomonidi was with me. I think we were ecstatic to see this material. Of course, thankfully, it would fit on my carry-on, and we brought it to Greece. So it's a little bit more than 500 letters, the dates are from the 1770s. Actually, this is 1722, so I'm wrong, through the 19th century and into the 20th century. So the next step for me, I mean, was to when I went to Milos, actually, was to figure out what we knew about this family. I visited this Catholic church in Plaka, which had been built by Louis Brest in 1823. And his burial place would be there. The tomb of his wife, I guess, his first wife. And then I tried to go online and figure out and find something about the family tree. It seemed extremely interesting, complicated, and obviously something that was totally beyond my league. But in any event, I mean, we would sort of have a next, I knew that there should be a next step to it. And then this is the St. Nicholas, this is the Catholic church at Adamas, I mean the main town on Milos, which was built by Louis Brest in 1827 in honor of his firstborn son, Nicholas. So we are at the American school, and obviously when you have something like this appear on your doorstep, there are certain steps that you take. First of all, you talk to the director of archives, Natalia Vogeikov, who has done this many, many times. But this was a very special archive because it was early, it was related so much with the 19th century. So she agreed that we can keep it within the library and it would actually be somewhere with the manuscripts of Fauvel and so on and so forth. So then I turned, of course, to what I had to do, and I knew what I had to do, was to find on the one hand, money to pay a valiant person to archive and catalog the archive. And on the left slide, you can see Nikos Nikolaidis, who was our fellow that year and who has been working on French families in the Aegean and in Athens. And he suggested a couple of people. And the person who sort of came to us in a very hot summer day, as you can see from her attire, Athanasouli, is a historian who is working on her PhD at the University of Crete. So Athanasouli, who is writing her dissertation, she looked at the material. I think she was impressed, but you will hear from her in a moment. And reluctantly, I have to say, she agreed to work on this because, obviously, she has experience and she knew that this will take a long while. And she has other things to do as well. But we managed to make her sort of agree. So she opened the material, first in the main reading room. Then she started creating these little piles, and we were hoping that this would be done in a few months. The work is a little bit more complicated than that, and you will hear more about it. But I really wanted to have you sort of see the process here. So we digitized the material, and now Athanasouli has really progressed quite a bit in looking at this material. So what we will do in the rest of the evening is to have sort of experts speak to you about this archive. And speak to you, we will start from close to the archive with Athanasouli and her supervisor, Professor Eleftheria of the University of Crete. And we will, they will lead us through this concept of consular agents in the 19th century and the Brest Archive. Then we will hear from Father Markos Foskolos, who is a very important keeper, among many other things, but a very important keeper of the archive of the Catholic Archdiocese of Naxos and Tinos, but mainly in Tinos. And he has studied philosophy and theology and church history, and he has, as I said, organized the archive in Tinos. So he will open up things to the presence of the Catholics in the islands. And then the last but not least, Alexandre Massé from the University of Toulouse, who is going to give us a better sense of how this group of consuls and vice-consuls was or was not organized, if I manage to understand, and how they came to these islands and worked with what their job consisted of, I imagine, in many ways. To me, what is important is that starting with this famous Venus de Milo, we go to the island at large and beyond. This is actually from, I had rented a room in this place, and I hope you can see the little statue out in the courtyard, but not so much looking for Venus of the Milo, but more looking and understanding the context and how this archive came to be, who were these people, and to what extent, and I think this is something that possibly Anna will talk about, to what extent, I mean, they were French, and yet they were intermarried with Greeks, and the archive itself is very interesting because there's at least French and Greek in it. Maybe there are other languages. So I will let you be, and I will invite Eleftheria and Anna to talk to us about. You will tell us what you talked to us about. About consular agents in 19th century Aegean, the Brest family, and its archive. Thank you. Το PowerPoint πρέπει να το κάνεις με.
Can you hear me? Good evening. I want to thank very much the Gennadius Library and Maria Georgopoulou for this invitation. And also I would like to thank you all for coming here tonight and have the bravery to come here tonight with this cold and this weather. Earlier historiography regarded consular institutions as parts of different state or ethnic commercial strategies in the Mediterranean, based upon a vision of ethnic or confessional communities as uniform collectivities with common interests and common strategies. It's a vision of a coordination vision. In consequence, consular institutions in the islands of the Aegean have been initially connected to a European organization of commerce in the archipelago in modern times, integrated in the country trade system of the Ottoman Empire, that is, in a network of smaller and larger ports inside the periphery of a commercial center. Insular harbors served as intermediary stations of exchange for merchandise and passengers, connected to the large maritime routes and markets of the empire, such as Istanbul, Smyrna, and Salonika, as well as to those of Western Mediterranean, Venice, Ancona, Trieste, Livorno, and Massé, and operating mainly on commission. Foreign merchants appointed local assigners, local agents, who were often attributed the term of consul and represented different ethnicities and confessions, such as the Armenians, Ragusans, Greeks, and Jews, whose economic importance, mainly that of the Greeks in the Ottoman Empire, grew during the 18th century. Thus, the systematic establishment of local consulates in the Greek archipelago, in the Cyclades, and the Aegean during the 18th century was associated to the prosperity and the possibilities of insular commerce and the development of local mercantile elites within the Mediterranean. European states, having established their proper consular institutions in the Greek archipelago and the Aegean, were mainly the Venetian state, the French state, a very important presence, that maintained its consular establishments until after the Greek Revolution, despite the French policies of retreat of the consulates in the Eastern Mediterranean during the 18th century. England, the Russian Empire, mainly around the time of its short-lived sovereignty over the archipelago after the end of the Russian-Ottoman War of 1768-1774, and finally a few independent 19th century Danish and Austrian consulates, as well as Dutch consulates since the 17th century, this was much earlier, and Spanish consular institutions were also established in the Aegean islands. The location of these institutions often placed the smaller islands of the Aegean in a different geopolitical perspective, and vice versa, as is the case, for instance, of the island of Milos. During the 18th century took place the rationalization and unification of a consular system in Eastern Mediterranean, based on a wide network of consular bureaus, organized upon fixed grades, capacities, and nomenclature, and regulated by special legislative texts that established a basic distinction of offices, that of consuls and vice-consuls. The structure and multiple jurisdiction and roles of these establishments and officers have been made known and studied in detail by contemporary historians such as, for example, Mathieu Grenet and Alexandre Massé, which we have the pleasure to have with us tonight. While consuls were generally considered to be European agents sent over to assume consular capacities in central commercial centers and ports of the Ottoman Empire, under the title of general or principal consuls, vice-consuls, on the other hand, upon which we will particularly focus tonight, were selected among the local mercantile circles and were nominated by the general consul or the ambassador in Istanbul, while their office stood in smaller ports inside a limited periphery around the general consulate. Nevertheless, despite the general homogenization of the system and its nomenclature in modern Mediterranean, the variety of terms defining their capacities in 18th century documents, including terms such as consolos, proxenos, varatarios, caricatos, and agentes, indicates a growing plurality of activities and agencies that could announce crucial transformations that we will discuss below. According to the view of consular officers as commercial nations' local representatives, the recurring conflicts between consulates and local communities of the Cyclades during the 18th and 19th centuries were long considered either to reflect commercial competition among European states in the Mediterranean, or to express ethnic or confessional emotionalism and crisis. More recent research moved further to explore the diplomatic and cultural role of 18th and 19th century consular institutions, studying European consuls in the Levant as political and cultural agents, mediators is the term in history, mediating between local ethnicities or communities. But again, despite the innovative, and more sensitive cultural perspective, the study of consuls and consulates did not altogether abandon a coordination vision of their jurisdiction and roles. A contemporary systematic study of the relevant archival material, that is, of the consular correspondence, of course, the correspondence between various commercial agents, or the documents edited by local administration of the islands, has shown that far from following homogeneous central or state politics, local confessional or ethnic actors were enmeshed in a rich and varied spectrum of political, social, and cultural controversial claims and strategies, while conflicts were quite often generated or nourished by the intervention of vice-consuls in local affairs, economic as well as political or social. The Greek Revolution of 1821 and the recent studies on the occasion of its 200 years anniversary enhanced the above conflicts and shifting alliances. Oppositions between consuls and vice-consuls of different national mandates often reflected less conspicuous social or political claims and transformations, while confessions and nationality claims were largely instrumentalized in local, individual, and family conflicts. Therefore, claims or accusations of confessional, ethnic, or national belongings should be analyzed as strategies of survival of power in local and interinsular tensions in a larger, dispersed but interconnected insular world. Quite a few consular families were reported to have been converted Catholics, and therefore were accused of treason during the revolution. That was the case, for instance, of the Baos family, who until the Greek Revolution held the offices of consuls and vice-consuls of the United Kingdom of England in Sifnos and of France on the island of Ios. You will hear more about them and their relations with the Brest family from Anna. While European, especially French consuls, were instructed to observe and implement policies of neutrality and non-intervention towards the revolted populations of the Ottoman Empire, indigenous consulate officers and personnel, in particular vice-consuls, appear to have been deeply enmeshed in multiple local and interlocal circuits of political influence, in which the mere marital or political connection with the vice-consulate of the island served as an important argument or challenge. The case, for example, of Markopolitis of Naxos is quite significant. Related by marriage to different consular families of the Aegean, such as the Mavroieni of Paros or the Massé of Sifnos, Markopolitis, who was deeply involved in local conflicts during the Greek Revolution, maintained relations with the local vice-consulates of England, Russia, and France, but he was never appointed vice-consul or consul. And therefore, he felt entitled to declare himself a protégé. Thus, contemporary research approaches consular officers and agents of the Aegean Islands as a distinct and composite political milieu, developing gradually since the end of the 17th century from a pre-revolutionary notability of the islands to a modern revolutionary and post-revolutionary political elite, whose networking throughout the archipelago and the Aegean seems to have affected not only local, but also 19th century Mediterranean state politics and societies. What were these transformations exactly? Consular officers of the Aegean were initially selected among the religious or secular members of insular elites and their administrative and political organs, the councils, the community councils, and were often involved in the Ottoman tax collecting system as tax farmers, or in the Ottoman provincial governance system as dragomans. Since the late 17th century and mostly during the 18th century, they appear in a local mercantile and entrepreneurial elite engaged in lending business and operating throughout the islands. A particular network of influence and information seems to have been developed between vice-consuls and ship pilots of the islands, who constituted a distinct professional and social milieu of the Aegean, and who knew the waters, literally and metaphorically, like the back of their hand. A link needing further exploration, as Anna, I'm sure, will agree later. Thus, between the 18th and the 19th century, local insular consulates tended to extend their economic and political empire all over the Aegean by their entrepreneurial activities and human networking, activating people and information to serve their own political or individual agendas. In this enlarged, modernized political space, the very project of establishing a vice-consulate became a high-stake action, not only for the claimers, but for the appointing local society as well. On the other hand, this political elite started branching out all over the Aegean and the continent through practices of multiple male offsprings and marital alliances. Consulate careers tended thus to become a long family affair, an affair of big families. Parental transmissions of the vice-consul office on the same island and appointments of sons, brothers, cousins, etc. as highly ranked consular personnel, for example, as secretaries of the consulates, became more and more the rule from the 18th to the 19th century. Such was the case, for example, of the Gizi family on Mykonos, the Pangalos family, a consular and merchant family of Kea, or the Frankopoulos family in Naxos, where Nikolaos Frankopoulos' son served as secretary, while he himself held the office of vice-consul of England on the island. Besides, as vice-consular offices were transmitted by marriage, notable families such as the Campani, the Condili, and the Mavroieni of the Aegean spread in in-law branches all over the Aegean until after the Revolution. For instance, the Mavroieni family, branches of which were established all over the Cyclades, since the late 17th century, married into other consular families such as the Campani. It appears that a 19th century consular notability emerged in the Aegean based upon a modern use of the old hereditary rights. This consular political and economic milieu of the Aegean seems to have largely staffed modern revolutionary institutions and 19th century state institutions. Consular officers were proposed and elected as members of different revolutionary committees, such as Ioannis Pangalos, for example, or Louis Stais, vice-consul of Russia and the Kingdom of Two Sicilies on Chios, such as Logothetis Pangalos. They were also elected, deputies of their provinces in the revolutionary assemblies. Logothetis Pangalos in 1823, Dimitris Kampanis appeared as deputy of Andros in 1827, Georgios Mavrogenis along with Ioannis Paximadis, probably vice-consul of Denmark in Tinos, appeared in the same assembly. Louis Stais also participated in several assemblies, 1823, 1824, and he also participated in the establishment of the revolutionary administration of Crete in 1822. So he went down more south in the Aegean. Some were also appointed prefects, eparchy, of the revolution. Ioannis Mavrogenis, for example, prefect of Patmos, Leros, Kalymnos, and Icaria. Michael Pangalos, prefect of Androusa in the Peloponnese, not in the islands. Finally, some also seem to have been appointed superintendents, ephori, of the islands, such as Frankopoulos of Naxos, who was appointed superintendent of Kio in 1822. To conclude, social and political transformations that consular offices and officers of the archipelago underwent from the pre-revolutionary period on to the 19th century seem to have largely contributed to the development of an indigenous modern political elite in the Aegean that seems to have played significant roles in the administrative and political construction of the revolution and the Greek state later. This elite combined the profile of older notability. They were holders of various local communal offices, secular as well as ecclesiastical, with that of agents with a wider geographical, economic, social, and cultural range of entrepreneurial and political activities and milieu. The above new line of research brings forward personal or family stories and narratives, the role of individuals and their career itineraries, their personal relations, their marriage alliances or local connections with different ethnic, confessional, etc. communities. Correspondence offers a rich and necessary field of research, not only to decipher and understand consular institutions and agents in the archipelago as they change from the 18th to the 19th century, but also the transformations in the Aegean political elites and their modern roles and strategies. On the other hand, the exploration and publication, because the large corpuses of correspondence have already started to be published, of personal or family consular correspondence opens new perspectives in the study of revolutions and state crafting of localities and insular societies. From this point of view, the Brest family and its correspondence that Athanasouli has started to explore and will presently talk about offers itself as a particularly valuable subject of study, as well as an intriguing narrative of human networking, political agencies, and individual projects in modern Mediterranean and its insular worlds. Thank you very much.
Before I begin, I would like to thank the Gennadius Library and especially Dr. Georgopoulou for inviting me. So in the first part of my communication, I will take as my point of departure Eleftheria's observations in order to present the Brest family as a characteristic case study among those multi-branched families of the Aegean which, under Ottoman rule and throughout the 19th century, acted as agents of political, economic, and social transformation in the Aegean insular space and the Eastern Mediterranean. I will start by showing two different genealogical trees of the Brest family, previously published, using them as a point of departure to follow the family members' individual life itineraries, focusing mostly on the kinship mechanisms and strategies involved in the formation of a densely connected insular milieu of notables involved in consular offices, tax farming, and more generally, local administration. These trees have omissions and inaccuracies, and it is my intention to introduce additions and corrections based on the documents preserved in the Brest archive and the relevant bibliography. The longer-term aim is to produce a single, as complete and up-to-date as possible family tree. This one is the most extensive and detailed genealogy that was published by the prolific writer, scientist and politician Andreas Ledakis in a study of Milos's notable families, the local archotes, conducted mostly when he was exiled on the island by the Greek military dictatorship. The second family tree is less extensive, but it preserves rare evidence on those of the family's marriages which were confessionally mixed, all cases in which Catholic members of the Brest family married into the most prominent Orthodox households. It forms part of this tree, forms part of a corpus of 176 genealogical trees kept in the archive of the Catholic Diocese of Thera that were compiled by the island's Catholic authorities for practical reasons from the mid to late 19th century and which are published in a critical edition by the historian Yannis Kipouros. The Brest family... Yes, of course. Ναι, συγγνώμη. Θα το φέρω πιο κοντά. The Brest family appears among them because Louis Brest's vice-consul of France in Milos and Kimolos's grandson and granddaughter, Louis and Catherine, were allied to the Catholic de Lenda, de Cigala, and Ruben families of notables in Santorini through marriage in the 1860s. There in the upper, I don't know how to zoom, in the upper left part. The Brest family probably originated from the homonymous town in northwestern France. The Santorini trees mention Kimolos as the birthplace of the second, at least the second oldest ancestor of the family, Mathieu Brest. As Eleftheria has pointed out, from the 17th century onward, indigenous consuls were typically selected among the local administrative and mercantile elites. In the case of the Brests, the evidence points to a pathway into French consular service that ran through a prestigious maritime occupation, service as ship's pilots for the French Royal Navy, often styled in the documents as pilote du roi. In this extract of a report to the French Minister of Foreign Affairs published by Georgopoulou, Vice-Consul Louis Brest, whose personal documents constitute the first part of the Brest archive, donated in the Gennadius library, describes his ancestors' appointments in the service of France as pilots and consular officers. Years later, after the traumatic event of his childhood he describes, Louis Brest was also appointed as pilot of the king, according to Julien de la Gravière. Sorry. Excuse me. Ναι, αλλά δεν ξέρω πού να... Κολλάει αυτό. Okay. No. Δεν ξέρω πού να το... Oh my God. No, I mean, I completely lost the page.
I don't think you can control it. So can you maybe say what where they have to go? Sorry. Back?
I mean, I can't see my slides right now, so a bit backwards. Backwards here. No, the next one. Thank you. The long-established profession of the pilot was widespread on both islands until the mid-19th century. It flourished in the ports that were shaped by sustained European maritime traffic and frequented by privateers and corsairs, at least until the 18th century, where demand of coastal navigation made pilots from Milos and Kimolos particularly valued. Over the 18th century, the distinct professional and social community of pilots formed the key nucleus of an increasingly upwardly mobile urban stratum, alongside the older local notability and the clergy. The Brest family stands as one of the most representative examples of the widespread in the Aegean practice of familial succession in lower and mid-ranking consular posts, as they held the office of vice-consul of France across 5 successive generations. Mathieu Brest, born in 1685 on Kimolos, and the son of what we know to have been the founding figure of this branch, was the earliest member of the family known to have held the office, and he was succeeded by his son Paul, born in 1722. The same pattern continued thereafter. Paul's son Gabriel, born in 1758, Gabriel's son Louis Brest, and Louis' son Nicolas. The later, Louis and Nicolas, being those whose correspondence forms the main body of the documents conserved in the archive. Members of the family also held consular posts elsewhere. Louis Brest's son from his second marriage, Félix, maybe we go to the next one, thank you. Born in 1830, has served as vice-consul of France in Benghazi. In the mid-19th century, while later in 1864 he was appointed in the post of honorary vice-consul of Chios. And in this letter, he announces his forthcoming appointment to his stepbrother, Nicolas. His warm indeed welcoming by the island's leading notables and his intentions to request proper remuneration from the French Consul General in Smyrna for his services. At the same time, the Brests forged alliances with other prominent families of the Levantine and Mediterranean consular milieu. One early example is Louis Brest's aunt Jeanne, who married the French consul of Marseille in the mid-18th century. And a later union solidifies a strong bond to the Ledoux family of diplomats. As Baron Konstantinos Belios notes in his diary on his visit to Milos in March 1837, Louis Brest was acquainted with the French consul in Bucharest, Joseph Charles Ledoux, and his son. He later arranged the union of his daughter Elizabeth with Charles Ledoux's son Louis, who at the time of the marriage was serving in Thessaloniki either as consul, according to Belios, or as chancellor of the French consulate, according to Mathieu Gestin. And he later held a series of consular appointments culminating in his last post at Porto Maurizio in Italy. The families maintained a close friendship even after Elizabeth's early death, as evidenced by the substantial correspondence between Nicolas Brest and Louis Ledoux, preserved in the archive. Furthermore, marriage within Milos' Orthodox long-established notability and with well-connected political families in the Aegean and beyond helped the Brests expand and preserve their wealth, social standing, and political influence across changing political contexts in the 19th century. To avoid the danger of turning this talk into a recitation of a marriage register, I will only single out the very advantageous marriages of Louis Brest's children. The most characteristic example is the strong ties through multiple confessionally mixed and double sibling marriages to the Tatarakis family, an old and perhaps the wealthiest landowning family on Milos that had also increased their economic power under Ottoman rule in the Greek Revolution through drugs farming and extensive credit networks. More specifically, two of Louis Brest's children, Henri and Julie, married Cleopatra and Ioannis, children of Petros Tatarakis and the Cypriot Eleni Bao. Ioannis has been a member of the Greek Parliament later from 1844 to 1874. Through these unions, the Brests became also closely allied to the Baos lineage that, as Eleftheria has pointed out, was a long-established family of voivodes, notables, consuls, and politicians of Tinos, with branches on Naxos, Mykonos, Paris, and Crete. So this is a letter from Eleni Bao, signing as Elenko Bao Tatsarakiana, because she was also a Tatarakis, to Louis Brest about a debt. Louis Brest's firstborn son, Nicholas, successor to the consular office, also married into another branch of the Tatarakis family, while Lucy, Louis Brest's daughter from his second marriage, married Lycurgos Kanaris, son of Konstantinos Kanaris, hero of the Greek Revolution, and 5 times Prime Minister of the Greek Kingdom since 1844. These alliances offer a useful point of departure for reflecting on the dual role and political identity of indigenous consular agents. Besides being representatives of a foreign power, they were also often primarily powerful local actors. The tension between these two capacities became especially visible during the Greek Revolution. Louis Brest, like other consular employees on neighboring islands, became entangled into the conflicts that erupted on Milos and across much of the Cyclades, including Sifnos, Paros, Naxos, Tinos, and Andros. An involvement that was, we could say, at odds to the cautious, neutral stance that France instructed its consular personnel to maintain vis-à-vis the belligerents and their authorities. These conflicts mostly took the form of opposition to the eparchs, the governors, appointed on the islands from 1822 onwards by the Greek Revolutionary Administration. Appointments that curtailed the autonomy previously exercised by local notables, and in the case of consular agents, also threatened established advantages linked to foreign protection and port-related revenues, mostly. Yet, for those same political and economic elites, families such as the Baos of Sifnos, with whom the Brests were connected, the revolution also created opportunity to secure political offices within the new institutional framework of the emerging state. Marriage, kinship, and other ties helped the Brests maintain their wealth and position with this political milieu throughout the 19th century. This is like another letter I found in archive dated from 1822 that informs us that Brest that year became tithe farmer of Milos. Now, in the second and final part of my talk, I will describe concisely the contents of the Brest Family Archive, recently gifted to the Gennadius Library by the family's ancestors, sketching few indicative aspects of the lives and activities of its principal protagonists through a small selection of documents. The incorporation of the Brest Archive into the Gennadius Library's holdings and the accompanying work of classification, cataloging, indexing, and digitization joins a growing body of editorial and digitization initiatives that have made diplomatic and consular documentation produced in and relating to the Greek lands under Ottoman rule and during the Greek Revolution accessible to scholarship. Three indicative and among the most recent works are the publication of the French news bulletins on the Greek Revolution for 1821-1822 by Nikolaos Karapidakis and Anna Bouradier-Dutey Loizidou, Maria Yurougu's scholarly edition of the unpublished French diary of the Danish vice-consulate on Naxos, and the digitization and detailed description of the personal correspondence of the French Consul General in Smyrna, Pierre David, held at the Hellenic Literary and Historical Archive, available online through the 1821 Digital Archive Research Project. The Brest Family Archive comprises 537 documents and consists primarily of the personal papers of two successive vice-consuls of France of Milos and Cumulus, Louis Brest and his son Nicolas Brest, together with related documents produced and preserved within their immediate household, including the papers of Nicolas' widow Paraskevi Protomastori and their daughter Cecile, who emigrated to the United States. Its core is incoming correspondence from family and friends, local and foreign correspondence from the commercial and financial worlds, shipmasters, notables, and officials of the Aegean Islands. The archive also includes notarial deeds, court decisions, and accounts. With the exception of a few letters exchanged with other Greek vice-consulates and their agents, the archive does not contain drafts or formal consular reports of official exchanges or official exchanges with higher authorities, such as the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. These, of course, are to be sought in the archives of the Ministry of Europe and Foreign Affairs in Paris and Nantes. Nevertheless, a substantial part of this correspondence bears directly on consular practice at the local level, particularly in matters involving commercial shipping and the protection of the rights and interests of French subjects and protégés. These documents can complement official consular records by offering a less administratively filtered view, even though very fragmentary, of political events and of the local and supra-local economic and social life that is often left out of formal consular reporting. It preserves, for example, the consul's sources and networks of information. And at the same time, it allows us to reconstruct their everyday lives as agents of the French state, but also, as I said before, as local actors. The archive was arranged around the principal recipients of the incoming letters, a choice that also preserves much of the material's chronological order. An exception was a small set of 18th-century notarial deeds, which were grouped separately since I could not securely link them to specific members of the family. The first section comprises 47 documents dating from 1818 to 1853, consisting of Louis Brest's papers. They cover most of the period of his tenure as Vice-Consul of France on Milos and Cumulus, a post to which he was appointed on January 1815, and in which he appears to have remained, at least informally, until the early 1860s, increasingly assisted, as it seems, in his duties by his son and successor to the post, Nicolas. Nicolas, who has firstly served as Vice-Consul of Cumulus, formally assumed the Milos post after his father's death on the 14th of October, 1862. Given the constraints of time and having already provided some key biographical context on Louis Brest, I will not dwell on the two episodes for which he is best known in Greek historiography, both of which have been thoroughly studied, and for which this archive does not yield new evidence: the attack by Maniot pirates against Cumulus and his household in June 1815, and of course the complex story of his mediation in the transfer of the statue of the Venus de Milo to France in May 1820. Instead, to close this section, I will briefly turn to a document that is more representative of his consular duties in practice. In this draft letter to the notables of the island of Astypalia, dated November 1827, addressed to the notables, I've already said that, concerning an attack by islanders on the small vessel Panagiotta, after the ship has been seized by French warship and brought into the island harbor. Brest writes to them, informing them that the French admiral is actually preparing to retaliate against the island and requests information of the fate and whereabouts of French men that were on board, among them officers. The second and by far the most substantial section of the archive comprises 384 documents arranged in 4 folders. It contains the papers of Nicolas Brest, who was Louis Brest's eldest son, spanning from 1845, before he formally succeeded his father as vice-consul of France, in 1864. I think, no. Through to his death in 1889. In 1861, the Smyrna firm Michele Cardona Sons wrote to him in his capacity as British consular agent, a position he appears to have also held at the time as his French service, at least for a year, according to Gunning. Much of this rich correspondence is familial, including numerous letters from his brother-in-law, Consul Louis Ledoux, his younger brothers Felix and Henri, writing from Benghazi, Suez, Smyrna, as well as from his older brother, the Catholic priest Désiré, who served between 1860 and 1868 as the last vicar ministering to the few remaining Catholic residents of Milos, Sifnos, and Kimolos. A significant portion of Nicolas Brest's paper sheds light on his consular function and his private economic activities, illustrating the frequent overlap between the two, as in the case of acting as local intermediary for French commercial interest on Milos, with a view for personal profit from the mediation. This French firm asks him to act as a point of contact for French wine producers seeking to establish business on the island. More telling case is his collaboration with the Massé sulfur exporter Benjamin Grimes. Maybe I have also some extra. No. And the next one? Okay, no, the previous one. In his first letter, Grimes asked Brest for detailed information. I had a layer. Yes, thank you. In his first letter, Grimes asks Brest for detailed information on the cost of extraction, loading, and transport, as well as on the volume of sulfur that could be mined and shipped from Milos. In Brest's draft reply, he notes that a significant share of Milos production, some 30–40%, was already being exploited by the Melas Brothers Company, and he instead proposes the much more profitable and underexploited sulfur quarries of Nisyros. The third and final section of the archive is arranged in 4 folders and comprises 106 documents and 9 photographs. The first folder brings together the papers dating from 1889 to 1894 and the beginning of the 20th century of Paraskevi, Orthodox by confession, daughter of Stelios Protomastoris and Nicholas Brest's second wife. I possess almost no secure biographical data for her. The dates of her birth, marriage, and death remain unknown, and her surviving correspondence effectively begins only after her husband's death. Her draft letters to her children, above all to Louis, together with a small number of letters addressed to the consul Carteron and to a few correspondents whom I have not yet been able to identify, convey with striking emotional intensity the hardship of her financial position and the depth of her grief as a widowed mother. She repeatedly appeals for a pension to support the upbringing and education of her orphan children. She seeks her correspondence mediation to secure her son Louis a scholarship place either at the École des Langues in Constantinople or at the Saint Joseph School in Smyrna, while also facing a series of legal disputes over property and inheritance with family and neighbors, documented also in the archive through court decisions and notarial deeds. I will close my talk by following the archive beyond Milos through the third folder in this final section, which centers on the Brest Earl family. The third folder in this final section of the archive centers on the Earl Brest was assembled by Nicholas and Paraskevi Brest's daughter Cecile. Born on Milos in 1877, she later emigrated to the Americas, bringing with her the documents that would ultimately constitute the Brest Archive. A typescript biographical note relates that after the death of her parents, she left Milos broken-hearted to follow her brother Louis through Europe and Mexico. In Mexico City, she met her future husband, Fred Earl, born in Saint Pierre and Miquelon, then employed as a telegrapher. They married in 1906 and had 6 children. Over the following years, the family moved widely. They lived in Mexico for 11 years and later in Peru, London, and finally New York as American citizens. The folder preserves a set of acts related to the main life events of the family: Cecile's municipal registration certificate and Parish extracts, marriage certificate, and a series of birth certificates for their children. Later items include family portraits from the 1920s and 50s, Cecile's will in Brooklyn, and a small corpus of letters and telegrams, much of it connected to Fred Earl's professional affairs. Thank you very much.
Apologies that you couldn't change the slides. I mean,
I'm sorry for that,
no,
but
that's okay.
it wouldn't work.
Now it's, I mean, we will have discussion at the end, so you can stay there or whatever. But now we will, I would like to ask Father Markos Foskolos, Patera Marco, from the parish of Kioura, Kardiani in Tinos, to come and talk to us. Pateras Foskolos will speak in Greek, but we have translated the talk so that you can read it in the background. So he will speak on consuls of European states on Tinos and their relations with the Latin community during Ottoman rule. Πατέρα Φόσκολο, ευχαριστούμε.
Να ευχαριστήσω την Γεννάδιο Βιβλιοθήκη και κυρίως την κυρία Georgopoulou για την πρόσκληση που μου απίφθινε να μιλήσω σε αυτή την ημερίδα με θέμα τους προξένους των ευρωπαϊκών κρατών στην Τίνο και τις σχέσεις της λατινικής κοινότητας με αυτούς κατά τη διάρκεια της τουρκοκρατίας. Είναι γνωστό πως ο θεσμός των προξένων στα νησιά του Αιγαίου εξυπηρετούσε μια σειρά από θέματα και ανάγκες των νησιών και των θεσμών τους, τα οποία θα ήταν δύσκολο να επιληθούν με μόνες τις επιτόπιες αρχές, τόσο την Οθωμανική όσο και εκείνη της επιτόπιας κοινότητας. Οι πρόξενοι εξυπηρετούσαν τα συμφέροντα των κρατών που τους είχαν διορίσει, των υπηκόων και των εμπόρων και των πλοίων τους, αλλά στο βαθμό του δυνατού και του επιτρεπτού και τα συμφέροντα ή ορισμένα συμφέροντα του νησιού στο οποίο κατοικούσαν και από το οποίο όχι σπάνια κατάγονταν και οι ίδιοι. Δεν είναι σπάνιες και εκείνες οι περιπτώσεις κατά τις οποίες οι πρόξενοι, ξένοι προς το νησί και τον κόσμο του, επέλεγαν να σχηματίσουν εκεί η οικογένεια και να περάσουν εκεί το υπόλοιπο της ζωής τους. Η περίπτωση Brest, χωρίς να είναι η μοναδική, είναι από τις πιο χαρακτηριστικές. Η αναφορά μου σε αυτή την ημερίδα περιορίζεται στην παρουσία των προξένων και στην άσκηση των καθηκόντων τους στο νησί της Τίνου, που πιθανόν να είναι και αυτή μια χαρακτηριστική περίπτωση. Στην περίοδο 1715-1830 στην Τίνο δραστηριοποιήθηκαν πρόξενοι από τουλάχιστον 10 διαφορετικές ευρωπαϊκές χώρες. Πιο συγκεκριμένα υπάρχουν γραπτές μαρτυρίες για υποπροξένους, αυτός ήταν ο βαθμός τους στο διπλωματικό σώμα όταν είχαν ενταχθεί σε αυτό, υποπροξένους λοιπόν της Γαλλίας, της Αγγλίας, των δύο Σικελιών, της Νεάπολης, πρόκειται μάλλον για το βραχύβιο βασίλειο που ίδρυσε εκεί ο Ναπολέων χωρίς τη Σικελία, της Δανίας, της Βενετίας, της Αυστρίας, της Ολλανδίας και της Ρωσίας. Αυτός ο τελευταίος, ο πρόξενος της Ρωσίας, εξυπηρετούσε και πλοία που προέρχονταν από την Σουηδία, τη Δανία και τα Ιόνια νησιά, ενώ αντιπροσώπευε τη Ρωσία και στα νησιά Μύκονο, Σύρο, Άνδρο για κάποια χρονικά διαστήματα. Ας προσθεθεί και τεκμηριωμένη παρουσία προξενείου του κράτους της Εκκλησίας, το παπικό κράτος. Διαθέτουμε στη συλλογή μας τη μεταλλική σφραγίδα του προξενείου, αλλά όχι ούτε ένα έγγραφο από αυτό. Επίσης, έχει σωθεί και η μεταλλική σφραγίδα του προξενείου του βασιλείου της Δανίας. Το υποπροξενείο της Αγίας Έδρας, του παπικού κράτους, δεν οφείλει την ίδρυσή του στο νησί με την μεγαλύτερη σε πληθυσμό καθολική κοινότητα του αρχιπελάγους, αλλά στην μεγάλη εμπορική δραστηριότητα που είχε αναπτύξει η Τίνος, κυρίως με το μετακομιστικό εμπόριο με λιμάνια αυτού του κράτους, ιδιαίτερα στην Αδριατική, όπως στην Αγκώνα και τη Σενιγάλια, όπου διοργανώνονταν φιέρε και εμποροπανήγυρις. Οι υποπρόξενοι των χωρών που απαρίθμησα πιο πάνω διορίζονταν στη θέση τους από τον αντίστοιχο πρέσβη της χώρας στην Κωνσταντινούπολη, ύστερα από προτάσεις και συστάσεις διαφόρων προσώπων. Οι πρόξενοι προέρχονταν ενίοτε από την Τίνο, όπως το τεκμηριώνει το οικογενειακό τους όνομα, καθώς και συμπληρωματικές πληροφορίες από το Επισκοπικό Αρχείο της Τίνου και έπρεπε να πληρούν ορισμένες σημαντικές προϋποθέσεις, όπως τη γνώση της γλώσσας του κράτους που εκπροσωπούσε αυτός ή ο γραμματέας του προξενείου, il cancelliere, ο οποίος ήταν απαραίτητος συνεργάτης του υποπροξένου. Η αναγνώρισή του από την πρεσβεία του στην Κωνσταντινούπολη του επέτρεπε να συντάσει ακόμα και νοταριακά έγγραφα ατόμων που κατάγονταν από τη χώρα που εκπροσωπούσαν ή να τα επικυρώνει με την αναγνώριση υπογραφών. Κάποιες φορές οι υποπρόξενοι είχαν καταγωγή από την χώρα που εκπροσωπούσαν, αλλά ενίοτε κατάγονταν και από τον τόπο της κατοικίας τους. Η κατοικία τους χρησίμευε, το σπίτι τους δηλαδή, και ως έδρα του υποπροξενείου και έπρεπε να είναι ανοιχτή στους υπηκόους των χωρών που εκπροσωπούσαν, ενίοτε και διαθέσιμη για φιλοξενία τους, όπως το επιβεβαιώνει και ο Τουρνεφόρ, αλλά και τα απομνημονεύματα του Αλέξης Δεβαλών στην Τίνο που έχουν δημοσιευθεί. Στον κατάλογο που κατάρτισα από τις αναφορές ονομάτων προξένων προκύπτει πως οι πρόξενοι ξένων χωρών στην Τίνο, που ήταν κάτοικοι του νησιού, προέρχονταν περισσότερο από την καθολική κοινότητα. Αυτό μπορεί να εξηγηθεί από το γεγονός πως οι καθολικοί γνώριζαν συνήθως Ιταλικά και Γαλλικά, που τα διδάσκονταν από τους ιερείς και τους μοναχούς, που διέθεταν μοναστήρια στην Τίνο. Αλλά και όσοι πρόξενοι προέρχονταν από μέρη εκτός Τίνου, ήταν συνήθως καθολικοί Ευρωπαίοι. Ακόμα και πρόξενοι της τσαρικής Ρωσίας ήταν καθολικοί. Το κημητήριο της καθολικής ενορίας της χώρας υπάρχει ο τάφος ενός από αυτούς. Όπως ήταν φυσικό, ο λόγος των καθολικών προξένων στο εσωτερικό της κοινότητας είχε ιδιαίτερη βαρύτητα. Ιδιαίτερα εκείνος του Γάλλου προξένου, αφού από τα μισά του 18ου αιώνα η καθολική κοινότητα απολάμβανε την ιδιαίτερη προστασία του Γάλλου βασιλιά. Η βαρύτητα αυτή αυξήθηκε ιδιαίτερα προς το τέλος του 18ου αιώνα με τα ορλοφικά και μέχρι την Επανάσταση, όταν οι καθολικοί εν σώματι δημιούργησαν τη δική τους κοινότητα ανεξάρτητη από εκείνη του νησιού. Η έννοια της προστασίας των καθολικών κοινοτήτων του Αιγαίου που είχε αναλάβει η Γαλλία με τις διομολογήσεις αυξήθηκε προς το τέλος του 18ου αιώνα σε σημείο που οι καθολικοί να θεωρούν τους εαυτούς τους ως Γάλλους υπηκόους. Η γαλλική προστασία δεν μειώθηκε ούτε κατά την περίοδο της Γαλλικής Επανάστασης, ούτε και επί Ναπολέοντος. Την τελευταία περίοδο και κατά την Ελληνική Επανάσταση έπεσε πολλή δουλειά στον Γάλλο πρόξενο στην Τίνο. Ευτυχώς επρόκειτο για μέλη της οικογένειας Παντάρο με καταγωγή από τη Σικελία, οι οποίοι ήταν άνθρωποι μετριοπαθείς και σόφρονες και με τη σοφροσύνη τους διατήρησαν ήσυχα τα ταραγμένα πνεύματα της εποχής στο νησί. Με τη συνθήκη του Λονδίνου 1831 η Γαλλία απέσυρε την προστασία της, αλλά η επιρροή της συνέχισε να υφίσταται, εξυπηρετώντας τον γαλλικό πολιτιστικό ιμπεριαλισμό που είχε εδραιώσει σχεδιασμό δράσης σε όλες τις χώρες της Ανατολικής Μεσογείου. Ευχαριστώ.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ για την αναφορά στην Τίνο. Θα μας πείτε ίσως και τα ονόματα που μας είπατε για τις λίστες που έχετε. Θα μπορέσουμε να συζητήσουμε γι' αυτά. I think we are now moving to our final speaker, and then we will have plenty of time for discussion. Alexandre Massé from the University of Toulouse, who is going to speak to us about a kind of consular anarchy, the French consular agencies in the Eastern Mediterranean from 1815 to 1856. And I think the pointer is not working, so I'll... You tell me when to change the next slide.
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, I would like to thank Maya Georgopoulou and Library Gennadius for inviting me to this symposium. The sharing of the Brest Family Archive is excellent news, and it gives me the opportunity to present some reflection on how the French consular institution works on the specific place occupied by the consular agents. My questions are therefore multiple. Who are the consular agents of France? What is their status? How are they chosen? How does this institution evolve? The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is a very hierarchical administration. At the top, we find the political agents, the ambassador, and the secretary of embassy. Below them is the consular institution. French consuls are not diplomats. They are accredited to provincial authorities. Their missions are economic, also of information, civil registration, and the protection of French nationals. French consuls have been well studied in recent years, notably with the work of Arnaud Bartholomé, Mathieu Grenet, or Sylvia Mars-Zaghari, for example. This research is particularly comprehensive for the early modern period, but more fragmentary for the 19th century. For this presentation, I will focus on the 19th century. It's the early modern period. There are a few or no distinction between a French consul and a consular agent. Most consuls are supposed to hold a royal commission, even if in small consulate, the embassy itself can appoint consuls, often through local recruitment. Until the 18th century, it's common for a consular post to be considered offices that are sold or leased. We also find agents who perform this function without pay. In the 17th and 18th century, the rules governing the consular institution, like Saint Mathieu Grenet, are complex, changing, and contradictory, which make it difficult to define the institution precisely. It is in the context that the Brest family begins serving France. At the end of the 18th century, with the Ordinance of 1781 and the French Revolution, the consular institution experienced a major transformation. It became professionalized. From then on, French consuls are officially appointed by the king. They can no longer engage in commercial activities. They are all French and follow a real career marked by frequent transfers. Consular agents are completely marginalized by this reform. They are excluded from the consular career. This is a French specificity. No, they are no representative of the king. They become representative of the consul. The Ordinance of 1781 limits these agents' duty to helping French nationals in any way they can. As the French Consul General in Smyrna notes, consular agents aren't officers, they have no authority or jurisdiction, cannot use a royal seal, and cannot perform any duty of a public official. Consular agents are now chosen by the consul and confirmed by the ministry. This new statute has a serious consequence for the attractiveness of the position. So, as the ministry often reminds, their work gives them no remuneration. When consular agents receive money, which is only exceptional, it is not a salary, but merely an allowance. This distinction is important because a salary gives a right to a pension, but an allowance doesn't. In 1835, the ministry used this argument to refuse Louis Brest's pension request. In 1823, Chateaubriand is clear. Consuls must choose rich people as consular agents, so they are not likely to ask for money. To sum up, with this evolution, consular agents lose many advantages. They no longer have to write to use a seal, to collect fees, or to maintain chancery. They are not even allowed to correspond directly with the ministry, as is recalled to Louis Brest. Under this condition, what is the interest in being French consular agent? Without a salary and with a very limited symbolic advantage, how can qualified consular agents be recruited? And above all, how can people be controlled when they are given nothing in return? Naturally, things go quite badly. In 1820, the ministry asked the French Consul General in Smyrna, Pierre David, for his opinion on the reform that should be introduced into the French consular system in the Levant. David offers all the consular agency in the archipelago, and his reply is quite blunt. This is followed by a long list of complaints against the consular agent under his authority. Once agent collects tax that no longer exist. Another one transports goods illegally on ship under the French flag. He adds that a sixth throws himself at the feet of the drugman of the arsenal who come to an Iceland to fulminate against the French over the question of the statue. I will let you guess whom David is referring to here. According to him, all of them self-France protection, put people in prison or exile them as they like, and above all call themselves consul, saying their authority comes from the king. Here we reach the heart of the problem. Before, this consul can have a chancery and are considered full consuls. The professionalization of French consuls formally deprives them of this right. But in practice, nothing changed. David stated that he finds things in this state in 1820. In 1824, David adds that consular agents perform official acts, legalize documents, sign visa, have a chancery, fly the king flag, and use their own seal. Some even make judgment. It is this situation that leads the consul general to speak of kind of consular anarchy. This situation is confusing for everyone, except perhaps for the Iceland inhabitants and travelers, who almost all take consular agents for real consuls. Even the embassy and the ministry sometimes seem lost in this mess, where the reality on the ground completely contradicts a particularly theoretical legal framework. Pierre David complained about this confusion, made worse by an ambassador who writes to agent and using the same formal rule as for the consul general. Ambassadors don't always seem to understand the full extent of the consular agent's abuse. For example, in 1823, after a pirate raid at Syros, the chancery of the consular agent Vucino is looted, and the French coat armed there is insulted. The embassy questioned Pierre David about the incident, and his reply with a touch of irony. You ask me, Count, why the arms of France were placed above the chancery of this agency? You could also ask me why this agency even has a chancery. This confusion seems to reach all the way to Paris. In 1824, Pierre David is surprised to receive a seal from the ministry for Louis Brest. He explained that the affixing of the seal is what gives official status to a consul signature. It's true that Louis Brest just obtained the title of honorary vice-consul, but this is purely honorary. David believes that the ministry, like himself, considers Louis Brest only as a simple consular agent with neither authority nor jurisdiction. He therefore concludes, somewhat oddly, that in Milo there is indeed a vice-consul, but no vice-consulate. Personally, I'd guess there is a vice-consulate, but no vice-consul. David's words are just confusing as the situation of the consular agents. The difficulty of this situation are immeasurable. This consular agent, who usurps the title and the function of consul, agents whom David called consuls in caricature, are mocked by many travelers. Many consuls note the poor image they give of France. Another problem is that the consular agent's attitude caused trouble for France. For example, in Naxos, during the Greek War of Independence, the French agent leads the Catholic opposition against the Greek insurgents who take control of the Iceland. Some agents, such as Albi in Santorini, are in conflict with the bishop over a question of precedence. Some incidents, however, can be amusing. In Zea, the consular agent set up his chancery on the first floor of a tavern. David is upset to see the French flag flying over such an establishment. He notes that a fight in this tavern is turned into a violation of the king's color, which the Royal Navy called upon for vengeance. I could give many examples, such as when the French consular agent in Limassol upset the Ottoman authorities by continually searching for Venetian treasures. Even if they can be amusing, this example illustrates two major problems of the institution: the recruitment of a competent staff and their supervision. As for recruitment, in principle, the consul, the ambassador, and the ministry systematically favor the appointment of French agents, but in practice, this is often difficult or even impossible. In many islands, for example, there are no French nationals. If we take the example of our treasure seeker, Fornelli, his consul notes that he is the only French person present in Limassol, that he is illiterate, and that he is assisted by his brother who writes in Italian. Moreover, recruiting French agents is difficult because the position is unpaid. One of the few advantages is the French protection, but all French nationals already have this right. Among the 116 consular agents I studied, only 27 are confirmed or very likely to be French. I use very likely because information on most agents is difficult to obtain. When there are no French nationals, the consul sometimes turns to another European, often a Christian, a Greek, for example. Even so, recruitment remains difficult. For example, in Syria, when Vucino is removed, the embassy suggests a clergyman to Pierre David, but he is old and deaf. Finding a consular agent is therefore often a real challenge, yet post officials still visit the site, even with no guarantee of success. David sums up the situation as follows. It is precisely to make the position more attractive that the consul and the hierarchy tolerate multiple abuse. In this way, consular agents enjoy significant symbolic advantage: a reserved place in the church, the French flag flying over their house, and they are called consuls. As Ludwig, consul in Syros, notes, there is a difference between them and the other inhabitants, and it is enough to lie them to their duty. Another difficulty is controlling consular agents. First, there is no supervision, as they live in town at their distant and isolated. For example, in 1823, the manager of the Corfu consulate says he has no information about the French agent in Missolonghi and believes he is in prison in Trieste. Moreover, it is almost impossible to take action against them because very often the same individual serves as consular agent for several nations. As David notes, in case of trouble, they take refuge under other flags and defy the state that loses trust in them. In the archipelago, there is another difficulty. Most consular agents come from families with a long consular tradition. This is the case for the Pangalo in Zaa, the Brest in Milo, the Spadaro in Tin, and the Gizi in Mykonos. They benefit from the prestige of the seniority. Once again, Pierre David explains the difficulty of the situation best, speaking of Pangalo in Zaa. Pangalo sees himself as the Prince of Cyclades, a hereditary and perpetual agent, in contrast to consuls who change frequently. In many ways, the situation is the same for the Brest family. The French consul in Syros notes that Louis Brest is the most notable of the inhabitants of Milo. The French traveler Fontanier observes that he has become in Milo something like a little sovereign. How can one control people who are expected to work but receive almost nothing in return? How can a consul appointed for a few years control someone whose family has held the position for 1 or 2 centuries? This shows the inconsistency of the French consular institution. Nevertheless, it is to remedy this extraordinary situation that reform has considered. In 1821, David proposed his own. For him, it is necessary to replace the agents who stand out for their ignorance, pride, and foolishness, and, say it, to substitute some intelligence, modesty, and the French spirit. Nothing less than that. He adds that this happy exchange can only happen if material is brought from France, because that cannot be found on the island. Recruiting an unemployed merchant captain or retired navy officer will be enough, but require spending money to send agents to all this island. On this issue, the ministry remains generally inflexible. It may give allowance case by case, is the case for Louis Brest, but it always refuses to accept the idea of a salary for consular agents. To David, the ministry replies that his reform is too costly compared the usefulness of the agents. If one causes problem, it is simply told to replace them. This answer ignores the difficulties that make such replacement hard or even impossible. Facing the problem, the ministry has another solution: to close the consular agencies. This recommendation becomes a leitmotif of the ministry, which repeats it regularly to the French consul. Some diplomats share this idea, such as the French minister in Greece, Piscatori, who note that the best thing to do with these very useless agencies is to let them disappear. Once again, this top-down as very theoretical approach is contradicted by the reality on the ground. As you can see in the area I studied, there is actually a significant increase in the number of consular agencies. Why? Because many consuls suggest creating agencies, either of their own, at the ambassador's request, by the Navy or by the Greek government, and sometimes the ministry suggests it too. This contradiction can be explained simply by the usefulness of consular agents. It is a flexible and inexpensive institution, which certainly causes frequent difficulties, but also provides important service. Consular agents offer hospitality to travelers and commanders of the Navy. They contribute to the public health surveillance in the Mediterranean. Finally, and above all, it is in time of crisis that consular agents demonstrate their importance. So, even if the consul of Syros sees their usefulness as only occasional, he also notes that they were very useful during the Greek War of Independence. Indeed, in case of conflict, consular agents proved to be an indispensable source of information. Their house can also serve as shelter. I will let Antoine Devoise sum up the situation about the Mykonos Agency in 1939, just before the Oriental War. In conclusion, as some travelers note, consular agents are often rewarded for their effort only with the ministry's ingratitude. Victor Fontanier deplores their situation and the way they are treated despite their service. Yet, he concludes that it is better to eliminate all these agencies. Yet, these agencies clearly prove their usefulness. On these slides, you can see the difference between the network of consulate and the consular agency. In 21, the next is 1235, the next always is French consulate, and the next is consular agency. You see the difference. I also thank to this dense network that the France recovered the Venus of Milo. Even if the ministry doesn't recognize the usefulness of these agents, it finally agreed to reform the institution. The Ordinance of April and August 1833 regularized consular agents' works, letting them continue the mission they have done illegally for decades under certain conditions. Now, is it up to historians to focus more on this final level of the French consular system, and I am sure that the release of the Brest Family Archive will make this much easier. Thank you.
Thank you very much all for giving us a quite wide and perspectives from different sides. I would like to invite Suzanne Vera to the podium, and I would like for you to say a few words, since this is very much a celebration of your gift to the library. Please.
Well, thank you. I am really so grateful to be here in Greece for the first time, and so filled with joy that my family's letters were able to find a home at the Gennadius Library. Thank you to Anna for all this work studying them and this amazing presentation that you've put together, as well as all of the speakers here tonight. Thank you. The people of Milos and other families I've met along this journey that helped me figure out my ancestry, I'd like to thank, and Mark Mazauer for introducing us to Maria, and of course to Maria, that seems to have a limitless curiosity for history, and by the work that you do every day. It's unbelievable. Although to me this is a history lesson, it's perhaps just as much an emotional journey in discovering my family roots. I had a chance to visit Milos yesterday and returned a few hours ago. This has taught me first that I'm most nervous when driving in mountainous territory and riding in small planes in high wind. And second, that paying homage to our ancestors can connect us to the world and to each other. I'm in awe that my great-grandmother Cecile carried these letters around the world with her, whether out of knowing that they documented a time period that could be used for future knowledge, or perhaps out of a sentimental desire to hold on to the last pieces of her grandparents and parents that she loved so much. My mother recalled her grandmother Cecile saying that mothers are the sun that everyone revolves around. And perhaps the little bit of sun I got in Milos over the past day was her presence and legacy of love that I feel in my life. Thank you for having this event and for hosting me in your beautiful city and country. And I will do my best to learn some Greek before I come back next time. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Suzanne, is really our pleasure to have you here and to have other people connected to the family. And I hope that when Anna is finished with the work, this family tree will be a little bit bigger, so that we can see it, but also richer in information. If I can open the discussion with a question that we had online for Father Foskolos, and I will invite all of you to come up and answer the questions. But the question was about the presence of a council of the Catholic Church on Tinos. Η ερώτηση ήταν ότι ήταν πολύ περίεργο αυτό που άκουσαν, ότι υπήρχε κάποιος πρόξενος του Βατικανού στην Τίνο. Αν θέλετε να έρθετε επάνω να απαντήσετε στο μικρόφωνο τουλάχιστον, και θα τα μεταφράσω όσο μπορώ. Επειδή έχουμε και κόσμο που μας παρακολουθεί από μακριά.
Το παπικό κράτος, το κράτος της Εκκλησίας, είχε ιδρύσει προξενία χωρίς να έχει βέβαια στην Κωνσταντινούπολη πρέσβη, γιατί δεν ήταν δυνατή η αναγνώριση του ενός κράτους από το άλλο.
The papal state, the church had opened or established consulates in different parts without, and in Constantinople, but without having an ambassador.
Ο Σουλτάνος ήταν ο εκπρόσωπος του Αλλάχ επί της γης, ενώ ο Πάπας του Χριστού. Άρα δεν υπήρχε δυνατότητα μεταξύ τους αυτά τα δύο κράτη να έχουν διπλωματικές σχέσεις.
Okay, so there was no possibility that the Sultan and the Pope, as heads of state or as heads of religion, I guess, would have sort of formal relationships, I mean political relationships.
Αυτή η εχθρότητα είχε αρχίσει ήδη από τον 16ο αιώνα με την ναυμαχία της Ναυπάκτου. Όμως σε ορισμένα μέρη όπου ακόμα υπήρχαν έντονα τα υπολείμματα, ας το πούμε έτσι, της βενετικής κυριαρχίας, τόσο στα Ιόνια νησιά όσο και στις Κυκλάδες, ιδρύθηκαν ορισμένα υποπροξενία.
But there were some vice-consulates in different parts, although the relationships, as we said before, were not there.
Τα υποπροξενία αυτά κάποια στιγμή καταργήθηκαν, γιατί δημιουργήθηκε πρεσβεία του παπικού κράτους στην Αθήνα.
Μπορείτε να το... Συγγνώμη.
Τα υποπροξενία αυτά κάποια στιγμή καταργήθηκαν, γιατί δημιουργήθηκε στην Αθήνα πρεσβεία του παπικού κράτους.
Yes, when the papal state opened an embassy in Athens, these vice consulates that were around were dissolved.
Το γεγονός ότι ο Όθωνας ήταν καθολικός βοήθησε προς αυτή την κατεύθυνση.
And this was helped by the fact that King Otto, the first king of Greece, was Catholic, so this helped.
Και η Αγία Έδρα εκπροσωπήθηκε στην Ελλάδα αρχικά από τον επίσκοπο της Ήρου, που ήταν Ιταλικής καταγωγής.
And the Holy See of Rome was represented here in Greece, thank you, by the Bishop of Syros, the Catholic Bishop of Syros. Who was Italian. Thank you. This is a communal effort. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Ευχαριστούμε. Θέλετε να ανέβετε στη... So, questions? Can I start but asking something about language? The consuls or vice-consuls did not have to be French. It was a good thing to be French in order to be in such a position. So how does it work? And how do you remain French after a second and third generation on a little island of the Aegean? You have to, yes. Once more. There, yeah.
I try in English, but maybe I need help.
Okay.
There are a problem for France because there are consul and vice-consul.
Okay.
Vice-consul, first of all, is like a consul, and all these people are French. Adjunct consulaire is not consul, not vice-consul. There are confusion. But because another country, Russia and Italy, say vice-consul for adjunct consulaire. You understand what I explain? Or
Not really. Vous le dites en français.
Alors,
on va essayer ça.
En français,
Ouais.
On a 3 niveaux, les consuls, les vice-consuls et les agents consulaires.
Okay, so there are 3 levels: consuls, vice-consuls, and consular agents.
Dans le système français, les agents consulaires ne font pas partie de l'administration française.
Okay.
Donc, ils viennent de toutes les origines.
Okay, so the agents can be of any origin. Okay, the consular agents.
Les vice-consuls et les consuls sont des fonctionnaires.
Okay, so the consuls and vice-consuls are public administrators of sort.
Et le problème, c'est que les autres pays, comme la Russie, l'Italie, eux, ils appellent leurs agents consulaires des vice-consuls.
Okay, so Italy and Russia call the consular agents vice-consuls. Okay.
Et c'est pourquoi, en 1833, la France fait une réforme et supprime les vice-consuls pour les appeler des consuls de première classe et de deuxième classe. Comme ça, on est sûr de ne plus confondre et de montrer que eux sont de vrais consuls, alors que les agents consulaires ne sont pas des vrais consuls et qu'on leur donne le titre de vice-consul, mais qui est un titre honorifique.
So okay, if I understood correctly, in 1833 there is a reform so that the term vice-consul is gone, so that there's no confusion. So they're consuls of the first rank and second rank, or something of the sort, right? So, but these are, but they're fonctionnaires, they're public administrators, but I thought you said they were not getting paid at some point.
Les consuls, ils sont fonctionnaires, ils sont tous payés et très bien payés.
Okay, so they were paid and well paid.
Ils sont français, ils ont fait des études de droit, ils font des tests de langue. On a vraiment une professionnalisation. Et les agents consulaires, eux, ils sont en dehors de ça. Les agents consulaires, qui sont vice-consuls comme Louis Brest, et eux, ils ne sont pas payés, ils n'ont aucun lien avec l'institution, en fait.
Okay. So the consuls were paid well. They had sort of good language skills. They had gone to university or were lawyers. But the vice-consuls or the agents, the consular agents, were not paid. Okay.
En fait, les agents consulaires ne représentent plus la France, ils représentent le consul. C'est lui qui les choisit. Et en fait, le gouvernement considère qu'il n'a pas de lien direct avec les agents consulaires.
So the consular agents are appointed by the consul. They are chosen, selected, and appointed by the consul, right?
Yes.
Something of the sort. Okay. Yes, of course.
In the Greek documents, vice-consuls and consular agents or consular personnel, the personnel of the consulates, are very often, if not always, confused. I mean, identified.
What are they?
Are very often, if not always, identified. They are the same thing, vice-consuls and consular agents.
Okay. So when Greek documents speak about the office.
They don't care to make this distinction.
Okay. Δεν σ' ακούμε μόνο. Δεν σ' ακούμε όμως, δεν ξέρω γιατί δεν σ' ακούμε.
you helped, because actually people are addressing not just Greeks to Brest as agent consulaire and vice-consul. It's used interchangeably, and at some point I thought that maybe agent consulaire, although I've read differently, is like a term that encompasses all of the lower consuls. Also, wasn't he paid? He was vice-consul. I mean, I cannot understand if he was a vice-consul or agent consulaire. He's mostly addressed to as vice-consul. And did he have a salary? Louis Brest. Est-ce qu'il recevait un salaire?
À avoir, non pas un salaire, attention, mais une indemnité.
Ça, c'est the allowance that you said.
Parce qu'on sait que, allowance, parce qu'on sait que ça lui coûte très cher de recevoir toutes ces personnes. Donc, il a à peu près 3 000 francs par an, ce qui est une grosse somme. Mais sur toute la planète, ils sont peut-être 12 à avoir une grosse allowance comme ça.
Okay. So apparently Louis Brest was one among the few who, despite the fact that he was a consular agent or vice-consul, he didn't have a salary, but he had an allowance. Maybe too many people went to Milo, to the island of Milos. He had about 3,000 francs per year, which was a big sum.
Un fonctionnaire français qui travaille au ministère à Paris, il va gagner en général entre 1 000 et 2 000 francs par an.
2 000 to 3 000 par an.
Entre 1 000 et 2 000 pour un fonctionnaire français.
Okay, so a public servant in Paris would have a salary of 2,000 to 3,000 a year. So, okay. So, but Brest, along with a few other people, was the exception, right? I understand correctly.
Un consul entre 10 et 25 000 francs par an.
Oh, so if you were a consul, it was better. Between 10 and 25,000 francs. Okay. Anna, can I ask you something? Other questions, actually, I'm monopolizing. I'll ask later.
I'd like to ask Anna, with regard to the family tree of the Brest family, you begin with Louis Brest's father. It doesn't go further back than that. Is that correct in the document that I was looking at? Ξεκινάει δηλαδή με το πατέρα του Louis Brest.
If you're talking about the first tree, that starts from, because the other tree starts from the bottom
and goes up.
It starts with the first Brest we know.
Who came, and was this the first Brest who
it's
came?
Not Louis Brest,
no,
it's his
it's his great-grandfather.
Yes, he was born somewhere in the 17th century, and I don't know, he's called Paul Brest, and I don't know if he was born in Kimolos. His son, Mathieu Brest, was born in 1685 on Kimolos. Maybe he was the one that came from France. I have no idea.
So it doesn't go back further than...
Louis Brest is the fourth generation.
The first generation?
The fourth.
The fourth. That's what I understood. So his great-grandfather, when he came to Greece, did he come as some part of diplomatic mission? Did he come as some kind of consul? There's no information.
There's no information for him.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, there was some, perhaps, I don't know if I'm wording this right, resentment over the passed down nature of the vice-consuls that were living, coming from another country, coming from France and living on these islands or wherever they were. But it seems like with the family tree that they would marry perhaps local people, and their wives maybe were Greek, and so on, at least from what I could tell with their names and such. Did that ever change that relationship with the local communities? How entrenched were they by nature as local people, or were they very separate in their dealings in where they lived?
They were local people, actually. They were not foreigners. Since generations. Most of these children I show did not speak French, like the daughters of Louis Brest. Those that haven't studied, at some religious school. They were considered locals. I think that is, and they married with locals. They were Catholics, but they would marry with the Orthodox. Parts of the family would become Orthodox.
Did you finish? And I wanted to say that these people, fourth generation of Catholics or French or English, or what French, mostly Italians and Venetians, that are found on the islands, are really people that are nationalized, that are entrenched into the local populations. They are considered locals because local populations on the islands comprised a little bit of everyone, a little bit of everything. The islands were small worlds that comprised populations from almost everywhere from the eastern and western Mediterranean. So they were locals in a particular sense of the word, locals. They were considered locals and they were included in the local population, and so they married into the local families. And locals could be, of course, the population that lived on the island. They were established, their family was established, but locals could also be a family from an island, from another island of the archipelago, for instance. So they married also into the other islands. So you understand, it's really an intriguing world, a rich and intriguing world.
Στη μέση της...
Thank you all for your wonderful presentations. I have two very brief questions for Anna Athanasouli and one question for Eleftheria Zey. My questions, Anna, are the following. The first is, how dominant were intermarriages of consuls? To put it more simply, did they tend to marry local women and mostly Orthodox, or confession is irrelevant? So that's my first question. And the second one is, I was very surprised with Mexico. Is this a destination, or maybe Suzanne, you might have an explanation? Oh, for the telegraph company. Okay, good. That's very interesting.
I don't have much to say because I don't. She traveled Europe with her brother because she was heartbroken, like Anna had mentioned, about her parents passing away. And then for whatever reason, they went to Mexico City. Fred, her future husband, was there because of his work. And then where they traveled to Peru and England and such was also for his work.
Of course they would marry and ally themselves to other families of vice-consuls. All of the time. All of these families were connected. Confession, I don't think that confession was a problem in general. Firstly, because when we're talking about Milos and Kimolos, there is no Catholic community anyway. There are very few people. So they either marry to merchants that live in Smyrna and are Catholic, or to locals, and of course to local notables. What I see in these marriages is social standing instead of confession or any other motive. I don't know if there was another question.
It was about Mexico, but I think, yeah, Mexico was covered. And very briefly, Eleftheria, a question. Maybe I misunderstood, but I think that you said that these people in the 19th century, especially after the Greek Revolution, they become eventually a kind of modern political elite. They get some offices there. And I was a bit surprised that you use the term modern, because I would think of them, as this kind of political dinosaurs, that they know how things work, they know the administration. So eventually you give them power because they know how to do things. But in which ways were they modern? That's my question. Thank you very much.
Yes, because they participated in modern institutions, assemblies, political organs of the revolution, political organs of the state. These are modern institutions. These are not the local institutions they were used to and they participated in before. So they enter into a modern phase of the islands, because the islands are integrated in the Greek state, and so they become modern politicians, modern political agents in the new state that is formed after the end of the Greek Revolution. And that's why I call them a modern political elite, as opposed to an older local political elite, local in the sense that they were, of course, spread all over the archipelago, but they participated in local councils, in local organs. They had a social and economic prestige because of their economic status, because they were rich. They were rich in land properties. They were rich in ships, perhaps. Most of them were involved in commercial enterprises and activities, and as opposed to these older activities, they become a modern political milieu. I don't know if I've answered your question.
Hello, very interesting, because this archive will give us more information about this family, which was very, very important. And even before the archive, we knew that they were married into the island with Greek women. And now for us, the nationality, we have a different way to classify this kind of families. But at the time, there were also the Levantines. I don't know, because we have to do a lot of research in order to classify them in this kind of families, the Levantines, who were from French origin or Italian origin, and they stayed in the Ottoman Empire, and they had the protection of France. Because it's not the same thing to be local, it's another thing to be married with local women and to be the 4th, 5th, 5th, 6th generation, but to have the French protection and have also French money. And when it was very interesting when we had the letter of the lady whose husband was dead, and she was asking for help to send her son into the School of Languages, École de Langue. This was the first step in order to be in the embassy, because you were interpreter. So this is not something that a local would do. It's with someone with having a network with many relations, would succeed to send his son to be there and then to have to be in the embassy. So I think that the researchers who will study this archive will have a more clear knowledge about the nature of this family, if they are Levantines or if after the Greek Revolution they were more identified as Greeks, as national Greeks. But in any case, actually, we have a very different perception. What I can say from my experience, because some years ago I have studied printed sources, and I have found some information about the Brest family. When we have, in general, French travelers, French administrators who are speaking about them, they're considered more like French, not as locals, because when they want something, they are going to address to them. But I don't know if you find information in the archives concerning their contacts with the embassy, with Istanbul. Have you found?
Do you ask me if there are these contacts inside this archive?
Yes, because normally we have a correspondence, but this is the official correspondence.
Yes, which is in France.
Yes, it's another thing. What I'm asking you, if you find in there these private papers, correspondence, not official, but an exchange of letters with the embassy, not with the ambassador, but to see if they had as a family contact with them.
No, there are documents, contacts with the French consulate of Syria and other consular agents of the Aegean. A sort of collaboration. Yes. Now, the other question about locals, I mean locals embedded in local life. How travelers view them it's normal that they view them as French because they were French, actually. But I don't know if you want to.
No, it's something that we will see.
Also, identities are not clearly defined at the time. Yes. I mean, we don't know. It's actually a very difficult scientific question. What was, because we're in the middle 19th century, what was their nationality? In the Greek state.
This is, we start having a more clear view about nationality after 8040, 8050. Yes, but before it's very unclear because you have not Greek subjects, you have Ottoman subjects, and you have Levantines, and you have also French subjects. So it's a bit complicated.
I may add something here, and maybe you are more entitled to speak about Levantines. But if I may add something here, the question of nationality is a question we have today, we ask today of these people. It's our question, it's our problem, the question of nationality and identity. Yes, it's a modern question, it's a contemporary question asked on populations that didn't have this sort of problem at the time. They could activate several identities at the same time because this served several purposes, several circumstances, several needs of the time, and they didn't have any problem. They didn't have any problem with that. It's our question. It's our problem.
Texting me something because she's watching this. She knew her grandparents. She knew Cecile and Fred, and she said they did talk about themselves being French. They considered themselves French. So maybe it varied based on the family or the person, but because they went with the husband's name, and because she spoke French, that was part of it. But yeah, that's what she said.
as we have the mother, maybe we could ask, does the term Levantine say something to her besides French? No. No, okay.
Do you want to take them? I mean, maybe read them? Or do you want me to do it?
In the 7th, 19th centuries, Milos was famous for being...
We cannot hear you.
Sorry. In the 7th and 19th centuries, Milos was famous for being a pirate nest. Do we find documents in the Brest collection documenting this aspect of maritime trade and the local economy?
It's about piracy, the question.
About piracy.
Not really, unfortunately, because firstly, these documents actually date for since after the 1820s, and most of them are from the mid-19th century onwards. So we have a lot of maritime trade, navigation, but not piracy. Of course, I mean, I've showed the document. There were only a few, 3-4 documents concerning the revolution where we have attack on a ship that has French passengers, which is, it's not piracy, but it is also a kind of considered piracy by some consular agents. So I don't know if I answered the question.
Vous voulez parler? So there's another question, or that's it? That's it? In terms of questions? Okay. About? Levantine, okay.
Cette grande communauté levantine, ils ont le ressenti d'être un monde différent, et c'est pour ça qu'ils vont créer leur propre journal, qu'ils publient en français, pour expliquer au monde quelles sont les pensées, les intérêts des Levantins.
So it's interesting. I mean, the idea of what Levantine is and who picks up this identity and who reinforces it, I guess. And you know, Smyrna in that case, as you are suggesting, is actually taking on this identity to show that they are apart. I mean, they're something different than the other world around them, right? To be better or whatever it is. I mean, I don't know, when they publish a journal and all of that. I mean, a periodical.
Pour Louis Brest, je pense qu'il se sent à la fois français et grec, et que ce n'est pas une question vraiment qui se pose. Il peut changer en fonction de ses intérêts du moment. Et par contre, ce qui est évident, c'est que de la part des consuls français, il y a une forme de mépris pour ces Français qui sont plus français, qui sont entre les deux, qui sont à l'étranger depuis trop longtemps.
What Alexandre says is that he thinks that for Louis Brest, I mean, he could feel French or Greek, depending on the occasion or depending on where he was. But for the French, this was a bit suspicious, that, you know, you had to sort of, these people were not French enough. They had lived too long abroad. Yeah.
J'ai un consul qui dit de ces Français comme ils sont faits au Levant.
J'ai pas compris. De ces Français qui?
De ces Français comme ils sont faits en Levant.
Of the French as they've become, as they've made themselves or something in the Levant. Yeah. Μπορώ να ρωτήσω τον πατέρα Μάρκο για κάτι? Today, where confessional differences are sort of set, it's very hard for a Catholic to marry an Orthodox or for an Orthodox to marry a Catholic? I would start with the Orthodox because I don't know about the Catholic. Δεν είναι πολύ εύκολο να μπεις στην εκκλησία και σε ποια εκκλησία θα μπεις για να παντρευτείς. So how were they, I mean, when you decided to marry a Greek and you were French, I mean, you were Catholic, how would you do it? Τι θα έκανες όταν ήσουν στο νησί τότε? Πώς θα παντρευόσουν και πού? Και ποιος θα σε πάντρευε?
Είναι το θέμα με τους μεικτούς γάμους. Να πω πριν κάτι που μπορεί να βοηθήσει στην κατανόηση της κατάστασης που επικρατούσε στο νησί. Κατά τους πολέμους του Ναπολέοντα, ο Άγγλος υποπρόξενος, ας τον πούμε έτσι, στην Τίνο, με τον Γάλλο υποπρόξενο ήταν σε διαμάχη. Ο ένας δεν ήθελε να δει τον άλλο. Παρόλα τα αυτά και οι δυο ήταν τινιακοί. Έτσι.
So, just as background to my question, that during the Napoleonic Wars, I mean, there was a French vice-consul and an English vice-consul in Tinos, who obviously they should be fighting among one another. They were enemies, but they were also from Tinos, which is a small place.
Δεν είχαν καμία εθνική συνείδηση, ούτε καν ελληνική. Το πολύ, αν είχαν κάποια συνείδηση, ήταν τη συνείδηση του ντινιακού και τίποτα περισσότερο. Κοίταζαν τα συμφέροντα και της οικογένειάς τους και του νησιού τους κατ' επέκταση ή και της πατρίας τους ακόμα.
No national consciousness, but local sort of family consciousness, tribal, whatever.
Όσον αφορά τους γάμους, η Τίνος είχε ζήσει περίπου 5 αιώνες κάτω από τη Βενετική κυριαρχία. Οπότε ήταν η ίδια η Βενετία εκείνη η οποία καθόρισε τη διαδικασία που έπρεπε να ακολουθούν οι υπήκοοι της τόσο στη Μητρόπολη, τόσο στη Βενετία, όσο και στις αποικίες της.
Tinos had been Venetian for 500 years, so it had to follow what the Venetians and the Venetian state recommended and more than recommended, enforced.
Η Βενετία λοιπόν με νόμο είχε καθορίσει ότι τα παιδιά στις περιπτώσεις των μεικτών γάμων θα ακολουθούσαν την εκκλησία του πατέρα.
So according to that rule, I mean, kids of mixed marriages would follow the father's church or confession.
Κατά το 90% ακολουθείται ακόμα σήμερα αυτός ο κανόνας.
And this is what 90%, this is the rule that is followed today. Okay.
Όσον αφορά τώρα την πρακτική των μεικτών γάμων, ενημερώνονταν και οι δύο εφημέριοι. Γιατί έπρεπε να υπάρξουν πιστοποιητικά ή πιστοποιήσεις, μπορεί και προφορικές κάποιες φορές, για το αν ήταν χριστιανοί ο ένας και ο άλλος. Ιδιαίτερα όταν ο ένας από τους δύο μπορεί να προερχόταν από μέρος εκτός Τίνου. Στην Τίνο έχουν διατηρηθεί τα ληξιαρχικά βιβλία τόσο των βαπτίσεων όσο και των γάμων όσο και των θανάτων για ένα μεγάλο χρονικό διάστημα και μπορούσε αυτό το πράγμα να πιστοποιηθεί.
So you had to go to both priests and they had to vouch that you were Christian. And if you were from afar, I mean, obviously you needed to provide certificates and all the information that was needed.
Οπότε μπορούσε να πιστοποιηθεί. Για εκείνους οι οποίοι έρχονταν απ' έξω, αν είχαν χαρτιά μαζί τους, μπορούσαν να πιστοποιήσουν κάτι. Αλλά αν η χρονολογία έκδοσης του πιστοποιητικού με την χρονολογία τέλεσης του γάμου ήταν μεγάλη, τότε έπρεπε να υπάρξουν και άλλες μαρτυρίες από άτομα τα οποία γνώριζαν τους συγκεκριμένους υποψήφιους συζύγους.
So if you came from afar, the certificate had to be recent or
Όπως και να το κάνουμε πάντως, όπως και να το κάνουμε, ίσχυε τουλάχιστον θεωρητικά ή επιφανειακά η πατριαρχία. Ακολουθούσαν του γαμπρού τη διαδικασία και της εκκλησίας του. Όμως η μητριαρχία, η οποία ήταν ιδιαίτερα ισχυρή στην Τίνο, άρχιζε την επομένη του γάμου.
So on paper, it's you followed the father's sort of church and confession and everything, but in reality, the day after the wedding or the marriage, it was matriarchy. I mean, it was the mother's rule. So, ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Thank you. Yes? Okay, can you read? I mean, open a mic and read it.
Fauvel writes these words about Demetrios Gaspari. I cite: Le grand-père du consul actuel eut 7 enfants, dont je crois 5 filles. Il n'existe plus aujourd'hui que l'oncle, frère du père du consul, marié à une grecque. Ils furent tous baptisés suivant le rite romain, 4 filles apostasièrent pour épouser des Grecs, une seule mourut catholique. Elle avait épousé Thomas Panis, français. Le consul a 2 sœurs, dont l'aînée épousa Léonard Koudrika, drogomon grec, et apostasia malgré sa promesse authentique et devint dévote grecque. La cadette épousa Monsieur Roch de Carcassonne, français, et demeura catholique. Nos prêtres ne manquent jamais de faire valoir la puissance ecclésiastique qui fait leur exister. Ils s'appuient soigneusement de tout ce qui leur convient et regrettent ou passent sous silence ceux qui pourraient les démentir. Les 4 tantes et la sœur du consul, ayant apostasié, furent excommuniées par le curé de l'Attique et de Negropont, Père Agatang. Je la remercie pour
Can you tell us? I mean, you can read. You read the text, but it shows how a family, how complicated this would have been, right? Unfortunately, Nikos Nikolaidis is not in the crowd, but he knows quite a bit about Gaspari. Kathy?
No.
Eleftheria?
No, we just thank her for all the information.
I think we should sort of pass this paragraph and maybe translate it and send it to the people who are here, just to appreciate the complexities and all of that.
Yes.
Are there any other questions, comments? Daphne?
A very quick follow-up to your question. Προς τον πατέρα Μάρκο, σε ποια εκκλησία γίνονταν αυτοί οι μεικτοί γάμοι, αν ξέρουμε, και αν στα κατάστοιχα βρίσκουμε ίχνη τους ή αν απλώς αναφέρονται 2 ονόματα και εκεί τελειώνει, οπότε είναι δύσκολο να τα εντοπίσουμε σήμερα.
Yeah, the question is in which church in the end, I mean, was this marriage taking place? And if there's enough information from the archives to suggest and to tell us when this happens and where this happened.
Από το 1715 και μετά, δηλαδή στην κατά τη διάρκεια της Οθωμανικής κυριαρχίας στην Τίνο, οι μεικτοί γάμοι περίπου οδηγούσαν σε αποστασία εντός εισαγωγικών. Δηλαδή, εκείνος ο οποίος ήθελε να παντρευτεί σώνει και καλά στην Καθολική Εκκλησία, η γυναίκα του, που ήταν Ορθόδοξη ενδεχομένως, θα έπρεπε να γίνει Καθολική. Από το 1715 είπα, 15 είναι αρχίζει η κυριαρχία των Οθωμανών, αλλά αυτό είναι ένα έγγραφο το οποίο δημοσιεύτηκε ή το 13 ή το 18 που είχε έρθει από τη Ρώμη και εφαρμοζόταν αυτό. Οπότε ήταν οι ίδιοι μελώνυμφοι οι οποίοι επέλεγαν σε ποια εκκλησία θα πήγαιναν. Αλλά στην εκκλησία που θα πήγαιναν, εκεί και οι δύο θα ακολουθούσαν από εκεί και πέρα το δόγμα της.
So in Tinos, after 1715, grosso modo, both would have, I mean, an Orthodox woman would have to become Catholic and enter in the church as a Catholic with her future husband.
Συνήθως εκείνοι οι οποίοι γίνονταν Ορθόδοξοι έφευγαν από τα καθολικά χωριά και πήγαιναν στο χωριό της νύφης. Και το αντίστροφο.
Για ξαναπείτε το αυτό. Συνήθως
εκείνοι οι καθολικοί οι οποίοι γίνονταν Ορθόδοξοι έφευγαν από το χωριό.
Okay. So if a Catholic would become an Orthodox in order to get married, I mean they would leave their village and go to an Orthodox village, right? I mean
και το αντίστροφο.
And the other way around.
Ήθελαν οι κοινωνίες τους να είναι αμυγείς.
Yeah. So that the communities would be more homogeneous, I mean, yes. But the situation in Tinos is similar in Milos or other islands. So there you would have this, so in Santorini, in Tinos and Syros, where you have large Catholic communities, you would have this, and Chios as well. Okay. Well, great. Oh, no. So what should we expect that this archive will bring to history? Anna, this is a question for you, or Eleftheria. No, but it's a general question, and I know it's a big one, but and we need to close. But there are, I mean, the administrative archives in France, and then you have these smaller private archives that may show up, and maybe more will show up. What is it? I mean, what should we do? I mean, sort of. Now we have to go to France and find the pieces of the puzzle that come together and that give us information on these family letters.
I mean, if this is a more scientific question, I guess it depends on the thing we're researching. And I said that it complements other documentation and gives a more local perspective, like what did they do on the ground, and has some things that are left out from official documentation, I guess. But then, are you asking about our demand to the French archives to?
No. I'm just wondering. I mean, what the next step is. We got this wonderful archive. We digitized it. We'll put it online. We hope that bright historians will look at it. So the idea is that you have people like you who will just attempt to recreate a more local context for the material that you already know, but write a microhistory or something else. This is what I'm asking.
For me, it's mostly like the questions we discussed together with Eleftheria, like this networks of power in the Aegean and beyond, that these also notables, the consuls, were enmeshed in.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think it's a very important thing. The very important thing is that it's a personal correspondence, family personal correspondence, and it's not an official correspondence with a vice-consul, with his superiors, or with Istanbul, or with the ambassador in Istanbul, or whatever. So we have the history of individuals, the history of family, we don't have many works on the history of families and family in the islands. It is quite important that we have this correspondence in our hands now. And of course it concerns a family of social prestige and possibly of economic prestige, because the salaries, if only the salaries are quite, the remunerations are quite high, quite elevated. This research could serve several fields of research, of contemporary research on the islands. Also, I asked myself the question, what is local? Because we have used the term locals, the local. It's a new perspective on what we mean by locality and local in the archipelago and in the Aegean. What is local in the islands? Is it only the island of Milos, or is it also his network, the family's networks and the family's connections with the island of Syros, with the island of Sifnos, with the island with Baos, the family of Baos, or the island of Crete, because he was involved with, in the history of the statue of Milos, he was also involved with the island of Crete, with actors from the island of Crete. So what is local in this question? It helps us to ask questions in a different way and in different perspectives. And I think it's very important. Of course, it's microhistory, but microhistory is very important. It's nothing but it's everything but microhistory. So I think it's quite an important and a rare corpus of personal correspondence of public officers is quite rare, I think. Yes, of course.
If I may, Louis Brest is between two worlds, and with this archive we can confront the French interest and the local interest, and understand how Louis Brest can his duty with his local perspective, with the local contradiction, and if his change of mind between France and local problem.
Thank you. I really wanted to thank all of you for being here and for this very interesting discussion. Suzanne, big thanks to you and your mom. And I hope we will get to see you more. And thank you all. And we have a reception downstairs so that you can meet the different people and tune back in. Thank you.